Hello everyone. So today's agenda includes the process of building apps and understanding the app framework that we have for QRadar. Though there are multiple ways to go about building apps, we have some recommendations for you in terms of protocol that needs to be used. We'll go through the data parsing process using a tool called DSM editor. Once you are done with the work related to QRadar, you will need to export the customized solution and perform some pre-validation steps. After that, you can submit the app for publishing. We'll go through all these steps in details. To top it up, we have Bob who will present a hands-on demo on the App Exchange portal, and he will show the different options which are available on the portal. So let's start with understanding the building integrations with QRadar SIEM. So in 2016, we started with IBM App Exchange portal. This is like a repository of apps for different products like QRadar SIEM, Guardium, QRadar SOAR, and many more. For QRadar SIEM, we have more than 400 apps as of today. You may have heard that QRadar apps and extensions, and you would have definitely had a question of what is the exact difference when you say it is a QRadar app or it is a QRadar extension. So to bust this myth, we'll explain you. Apps contain code which usually manipulates the data and displays data in a different tab on a QRadar console, while extensions include only parsing logic, rules, reports, reference data, and other features of QRadar. Apps and extensions, both of them are like a plug and play utility. You have to download it from the App Exchange portal and then install it on a QRadar console. It may be installed on a QRadar console or app host, which if it is available. So anyone who wants to integrate any security product can contact the Tech Alliance program team, which I am a part of. There would be an email address mentioned in the chat box now, as well as it is at the end of the slides. You may send us an email and our team will get in touch with you. We will help you to understand the scope of the app that you want to build or the extension that you want to develop and help from the planning to the publishing phase of that particular app. You will be registered to our partner portal where you will go through an automated NDA signing process. Once done, you will have access to the QRadar ISO, which you can download and start building your app. Now, we'll try and understand what is app framework. So QRadar apps are nothing but Docker containers, either running on QRadar console or the app host. For building these containers, IBM provides something called as an SDK, which will help you to develop the apps. If you want to build QRadar apps, which is for manipulating the gathered data, then you should have a working knowledge of Python and Flask. IBM has created many sample applications and has posted them on GitHub. If you want to use any of the features of the QRadar, we have available apps which you can refer to. Now for building extensions, it is way far more easier. You may just need to configure protocols and a parsing logic, and then you can export this as a package. We'll go through these detailed steps in later slides, but building apps and publishing them on App Exchange is no rocket science, and every one of you would be able to integrate your products with QRadar. The benefit of having your app on App Exchange is that thousands of your customers will have access to it, and that too for absolutely free. The apps and the extensions will be verified by IBM, and for your customers, it will be just a matter of plug and play. On the right hand side, we have a screenshot of the sample apps which are made available to everyone. Now, whenever we talk about, say, integration, the two most important factors that should be considered are first is the protocol, and second is about the parsing logic. So, here on the slide, let's understand more about the protocols in reference with QRadar. On the left hand side, you may see that there are more than 50 protocols which are supported out of the box. This includes vendor agnostic protocols like TLS syslog, JDBC, etc. On the other hand, we have a vendor specific protocols too. We have a few vendors like Microsoft, Google, and Amazon, which are mentioned here, and their protocols too. In the second column, you may see something mentioned as undocumented protocols. So let's take an example of a security solution. Let's call it XYZ. You may be able to send data from XYZ solution to QRadar using syslog or say any other protocol. Now, IBM QRadar would give you multiple options to fetch data from your security solution, which is XYZ, using different protocols. But if those protocols are not tested, then it is explicitly mentioned as undocumented protocol. You will see this term whenever you are configuring the new log sources. And on the extreme right, we have a protocol called Universal REST API protocol, or we call it a REST API itself. IBM has developed this open and a very powerful protocol so that any security solution which has some open REST API endpoints will be able to seamlessly integrate with QRadar. Before we had the UREST API protocol, the QRadar apps used to query the security solutions to get requested data and then convert this data in a syslog format and send it to the event pipeline in QRadar for parsing. This was a very inefficient way as it needed to convert that data to syslog, and that was done in the containerized apps on QRadar. With the advent of the UREST protocol, now we request JSON data from the security applications and send that JSON data to QRadar for parsing. JSON is one of the easiest format to parse for QRadar DSM. There is less probability of writing an expensive parsing logic for JSON as compared to say syslog, where we usually use a regex. We'll explain this concept in more details in future slides. So getting to the Universal REST API protocol details. So whatever we discussed, to visualize it, you may see that the API query is sent by the QRadar and the JSON data is fetched from the security solution. Now to generate this API query on the QRadar, you need some configuration information. This configuration information would be what kind of data we require from that security solution, how many data records do we require, or what is the time span that is required. All these configurations and many more such configurations can be done using two XML files, which are mentioned here. One is the workflow XML file and other is the workflow parameters file. We will cover both these files now. Back to our diagram, you may see that the JSON data is fed to the DSM, which parses the data, and we see the details of it in the log activity tab on the extreme right. Now, the query is, how do you write a workflow XML file? So just to make it easy for you, IBM has already published a lot of workflow XML files, and these are in the GitHub repository and are available for free for you to use, understand it. Now, to give a basic example, I have picked up one of the examples for Okta, and let's see how it goes. So the first part of the workflow XML is where you mention the name and you mention probably the version of the Universal REST API that you are going to use. In the second part, you usually mention the parameters. So for integrating with Okta, the two parameters that we'll need is the host and authentication. So it is probably the host name that we'll require and the authentication token that will be generated at the Okta side and which we will require on QRadar. After that comes the actions part. And in actions, the first is initializing the bookmark. So whenever the first query is run from the QRadar, we need to know what kind of data or from what period of data that we want. We can mention that last 10 minutes data or 15 minutes data, or while initializing a bookmark, you can even say that I want data from 1st of June 2024 and so on. So you'll get a 1 day's data or 2 days, 3 days, depending on the bookmark. Once you have initialized that bookmark, you can actually fetch the events and you invoke a get method or whatever API endpoints are available, you call them. While doing the same, you have many filters. For example, let's see here, you have something called a limit. So even though there are lakhs of events which are present, if you have put a limit, then you will only get those number of events from Okta. So here we have mentioned that we just want 1,000 events, latest events from it. When you are fetching the events, there is a probability that say that API endpoint is not available, or there could be thousands of other things that may happen. So you need to handle these errors and give it some structure. So basically, you can write conditions, and in these conditions, you can put in abort statements or you can put in log statements. If you put in a log or debug statements, these statements will be available for you to view in the app logs, and you will understand where your app is failing to fetch the logs. After handling the errors, if there are no further errors, you can actually post these events. That is, you can send these events to the event pipeline and updating the bookmark. Of course, after posting the events, now the new bookmark needs to be updated, and you can obviously configure it depending on what kind of or what amount of data that you require. Say last 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, whatever it is. So we started with the XML workflow, gave it a name. We understood what are the parameters that need to be put in. We have the actions, which we divided into 5 parts. And now we have tests. So for the these are usually the protocol tests, and these are like for Okta. While if we are running a query for Okta, does our DNS resolution work fine? Does our TCP connection work fine? If we have a proxy in between, and if we have configured a proxy between, say, QRadar and Okta, does the proxy work fine? So these are all the tests that we have mentioned here. These tests are available whenever you say configure your log source using UREST protocol. So just to have a summary of what we discussed, there's a workflow pattern where we have the parameter declaration. In the actions, we have to initialize bookmarks, fetch events, handle errors, post events, and update bookmarks. And at the end, there are tests. No, now the most important part is about the actions and the different like fetching events. Your endpoints could be different, handling errors, there could be multiple. So in this case, whenever you are developing or you are writing this XML workflow XML file, as I said, there are around 40, 50 integrations which are available for you. You can just go through them, understand how they have handled the errors, how they have posted the events, how they have fetched the events, and whatever configuration that you want, whatever customization you want, you can easily do it just by observing what others have already done. Now, the files which are available on GitHub have already been verified by IBM, and hence they are very safe to use, and say, you can just copy them, make some changes, and your integration is ready. So this was all about, say, the workflow XML file. Now about the workflow parameter file. So you remember that there were two parameters that we had defined, the host and the authentication token. But this host and authentication token will change for every customer because his Okta server could be different, right? So this is the place from where you pass on the values for that particular host and the authentication token that is generated for that particular host. So here, whenever the customer downloads these files and tries to use them, what they should do is put in their the host name of the Okta that they have, as well as the authentication generated on the Okta server that they have access to. So in general, what we understood till now is in Universal REST API protocol, we have two configuration files that we need to write. And for writing those also, we have more than say 40-50 applications which are available, and it's a very standardized process. So once you receive all this data in a JSON format, what do you do with it? So you will get that data in on say the log activity tab. Once you get on that log activity tab, you select that particular event, and then you go ahead and invoke something called as a DSM editor. So DSM editor is a tool which is provided by QRadar. Okay, and this is exactly for developing your parsing logic. Now, as this is a JSON data, the format of it is more like a tree structure, which has different branches, and on each branch, you can go ahead and have a sub branch and all that. So, when you want to parse something, so for example, here I wanted to have this name called Cabrilla1 to be parsed, and I wanted it to be renamed as, say, endpoint name. Now, had it been a syslog data, I would have to write a regex probably. And if while writing a regex, there is a high probability that my regex may or may not be very optimized. But if you look at the JSON data, you just have to write a JSON expression, which is nothing but, as I said, in a tree format, it is just one branch after another. So whenever I go to an endpoint and say name, so if you go here to the endpoint and name, you will just get Cabrilla1. And once you do that, if you look at the second image below, you can see that now the Cabrilla1 endpoint has been parsed. Once it is parsed, you can also map that event to a particular QID. And once you map that to a particular QID, all the rules that are already enabled on QRadar, which is hundreds of them, and if you have mapped it correctly, all those hundreds of security use cases now start working for the data which you have just parsed. Okay, so just by enabling a UREST protocol and writing couple of parameter files, and then just by mentioning, say, the branch name and parsing and mapping the events, your integration is almost done. But there are a few more steps that are required, which are pretty manual. So in all, when you say that we are developing an application or we are developing an extension, the things that you need to do is first writing XML workflow files for the UREST protocol. So those look something like this that we have seen. Once you have done that, you parse the data using a DSM editor. We have also seen that as an example. After doing that, the parsing logic that you have developed on your local QRadar box, that parsing logic needs to be exported. For exporting the parsing logic, there are a couple of ways in which you can do it. One is a CMT tool, which is a CLI tool, which you can use to export it. Another is a QRadar APIs are also available, using which you can export this parsing logic. So here we have shown that how to use the QRadar API to export the parsing logic that we have just created using DSM editor. Once you do that, there is something called as a manifest file that you will have to write. Now, as I had shown in the first screenshot itself, there were sample apps available for you to go through. Each app on a QRadar has a corresponding manifest file in it. Manifest file is nothing but kind of a metadata for that particular app, where it gives you the name of the file, the name of the app, the UUID of that, and much more data, whatever you want to put in, like what was the date on which you had developed this and all that. Once you have both these things, you just zip the folder. So you have the parsing logic and you have created a manifest file, and then you zip that folder. Once you zip that folder, you can use that zip folder on QRadar, and you can use something called a pre-validation app. So on QRadar, you can download it from App Exchange. As you can see, this pre-validation app can be installed on QRadar. The zip that you have created right now, the customized solution that you have created right now, say for me it was Okta, for you it might be something else. I'll put that zip file into this pre-validation app. Once I put it, on the right hand side, you can see that there are various green marks out there. So these green marks tell you that the file is absolutely fine. If there is a red mark, it will also show you what is wrong. Say the manifest file did not have a right indentation or something like that. It will exactly show you what the problem was. You can go back, correct it, again zip the folder, come back and do the pre-validation. The reason why we have provided this pre-validation dashboard and the pre-validation app to you is so that whenever that app comes to us, most of the validation or the most of the testing that we as IBM do for your apps and extension is already done by this app. And the amount of time that is required for us to turn around this app into a published app becomes lesser. So this is one of the most important step, critical step, that you go through the pre-validation of your app on your own QRadar, and you know that most of the things that you have done are correct. So once it goes through the pre-validation app, you are good to go ahead and submit the app for publishing. Now, as the IBM Technology Alliance program, it is for the ISVs, and as you can see on the right hand side, there are many well-known as well as new logos that you can see here. So what is the benefit is that whenever you integrate with us, we publish it on App Exchange, your logo is shared, as well as you can share IBM's logo with you, and those NDAs are already signed automatically. There are various marketing opportunities when you integrate and you publish an app. We can go ahead and write joint blogs. We can do webinars like these. We can have solution briefs. We can even create videos and post it on YouTube and the supported channels. We have done various such apps with very new products too and have published them. So if you have any queries or if you have any integrations that you want to do mention them and we'll get back to you. The link that is mentioned here has in details the IBM.com products QRadar SIM integrations. This link has details on what the steps are and how it will be shared by IBM. So the next step that we want you to go ahead with is uh, this is the email ID that I was talking about. It may be already on the chat, and you can copy it and you can send us a request. Uh, Once you send us an email, we'll send you request for a meeting. We'll have a call. We'll understand what your requirements are, help you build the app, and we jointly go to the market. We have solution blogs, customer case studies, etc.